Claire, if you don't mind, just give
right.
Yeah,
so,
just an overview, if you don't mind.
I think over the last sort of 6 to 12 months, obviously the last 12 months, we've been in a COVID period. And I would have said the first 6 months of that, we didn't really bother our sort of community contacts and networks too much talking about local pilot. It was a case of checking in, the ones that we had good relationships, checking in on them and checking that they were okay. And actually, when they were talking to you, their priorities were so far removed from what we were discussing that you would have felt really a bit cheap doing that. You know, they were talking to people who had family members that were dying, etc., people that had lost domestic violence. So we kind of left them to it, but just kept those relationships going, I would say. And then once Robbie came into post, we'd come out of that sort of first lockdown, and it was a case of probably picking up some of those conversations again when we felt it was a bit more appropriate to do that. I don't know whether Robbie's back on now. So with Gloric, we certainly had quite an established sort of group that we met with fairly regularly to check in with them, to look at what the next steps wanted to be. And certainly from before lockdown, that was around the community having money that they could kind of decide what they wanted to do with. So we had this community investment fund, which when Robbie came into post, that's what we did. So it was kind of like, well, we've done part of what you said we wanted to do. I'm not saying that it's not been without problems, but certainly that was something that we were really, really keen in terms of keeping that interest and engagement with the community, because there was an awful lot of talking going on. We were almost over consulting and over engaging with them. That was sometimes how I felt, and it got to the point when they just said, we need to just get on with the doing now. So then we were quite conscious that we sort of, when Robbie came into post saying this is what we really need to get going with, and yeah, we're doing okay with that. We've got sort of 10, 11 sort of quite, some of them sort of quite unusual, sort of small grant bids that have come through that we're quite happy with. And we're at that point now when we're saying to the community, well, that's okay with all these small grants, but nobody else is coming forward with any small grants. We over asked them what they want to do, and we need to start thinking about what we can do collectively rather than sort of small groups coming to us saying we've got this idea, we've got that idea. It's getting them to perhaps think collectively about what they want to do. So I think, just reiterating what other people have said, it's just being upfront and honest and involving them at all stages as much as we can and responding to what they say. So if they're saying we're getting a bit fed up of this, asking, well, what do you want us to do to change it? You know, you're being quite cautious about it, but being responsive to that as well. And being as transparent and honest with people as possible, which I think helps keep those relationships of trust, and then feeling that they can say something to you and be quite honest. They can tell you the concerns, of the community, rather than coming along to something and just not talking. And we're there with some partners, some of them not so much, but that's a given with anything, isn't it? Robbie, are you back on?
I'm here, but I've no idea if I'm making noise.
Yeah. Robbie.
And you are now, yeah. Did you hear what I said? Or was I going off?
Robbie, what would be interesting, because we know this has been challenging for a number of localities, is just to sort of just chat us through some of the strategies that you feel have worked to involve local people, and also some of the things that you've tried in this period of time but haven't worked. Because I think that, you know, just building on what Claire was saying, having tried is still something in this, you know, this global pandemic that we've had for the last year. So it's not about, you know, I think just sharing would be really helpful, please.
Sure. And I think maybe one of the themes within it is what works, or what we've tried for kind of organisations or groups versus individuals and members of the public. And I would say it's worked a lot better with the groups. And I think our attempts to try and engage members of the public have probably not really paid off at all. But then through those groups and through those community associations and stuff, I think we are drawing in the local people that are there. So to that end, like historically, and I think Claire probably would have mentioned it when I was trying to get my mic to get back working, what did work really well was the piece of like community engagement that was completed before the pandemic, so in 2019, and published just at the beginning of 2020, where we actually engaged the community members, like the community organisations, to talk to people themselves. So rather than us trying to come in and do something, we paid some of those community members who've got those relationships to have the time and capacity and space to do it, and that did work. And I think that enabled some new relationships to form in those physical spaces where people could come together, talk about what they wanted to do, discover there were others who wanted to do similar things, and build from it. And actually, some of those groups that formed in those discussions are the ones we've been working with over the last 6 months. And that's what's worked well, I think, in the last 6 months. It's those smaller groups of people working together and supporting them and having conversations with them, like one-to-one or in smaller groups, to develop their assets and develop what they want to do. But we have tried to create kind of open spaces that any partner can get involved in and come along to. So in the 2 localities that we're focused on, in the end of last year, we were running monthly Zooms, drop in, see who else is involved in this kind of program, talk about some ideas, nice and open. What can we do about it? How can you take it on? I think what we've learned from that, I would say, is that drawing in new people and creating new relationships via Zoom during a pandemic is not very effective. People can't really create that connection and spark off each other and build trust as well. That's the feedback I've got from a number of local groups that are engaged in that space. And so participation's kind of dwindled to the point where we're not really trying to do that approach anymore, because it just wasn't drawing in the new partners, like Claire mentioned, and the new ideas, because people didn't quite feel comfortable in that space to build those relationships. So instead, the ideas kind of that have popped up, we've gone, okay, there's a nugget, let's take that offline with the people that seem like they could support that, and let's develop it with them. And that's where the most gains, I think, have come in the last 6 months, in engaging people's ideas and new groups that were previously just someone who wanted to do something. That's really interesting then. So it's something where these kind of bigger events, or getting, a whole community together, isn't really where it's at, but actually sort of the little nuggets, working with those local people build, or those smaller groups, those areas where there is some traction. And I just wanted to reflect back on, I think you're probably all aware that Greater Sport and Greater Manchester Moving are developing or redeveloping the strategy at the moment. And there's been a whole raft of engagement exercises, and some of them, Eve Holt was reflecting with me that sometimes it's been possible to bring people together, and there's been enthusiasm and energy to bring people together. And sometimes it's been about where people already are meeting and getting into them, going onto their agendas and that sort of thing. And then sometimes, like you say, it's through these sort of personal connections. So I think what we're learning is, obviously, just there is not, certainly not one right way, but it's being able to be flexible, try different approaches, respond to what you see in front of you. I think, just for the sake of time, we'll move on to Kath now, and to an example from Wigan, and we've got Rob and Chris, I believe, to introduce that. So thanks very much, Robbie and Claire, and appreciate you taking the time to share that.
Thanks for that, Katie. Yeah, we've got Chris here from Wigan, and also Rob from the Inspiring Healthy Lifestyles team, who's been leading on the Care to Ride project, working with Chris on this. So I'll just hand over to Rob just to explain a little bit about where he's from and what the Care to Ride project is.
Hi guys, yeah, my name is Rob Street from Inspiring Healthy Lifestyles. It's the Care to Move programme that we run, which is the programme that helps people in care homes stay active, maintain activity levels, or increase activity levels depending on how much they're doing at the moment. What we were looking at was different ways of how they can be active. So we've done things like the Olympic Games for them. So they've been doing in-house Olympics, and they've also come to some of our centres, like for example at Robin Park, to do that as well. But we wanted something that they could do constantly and consistently at their own leisure as well. So we looked at different ways of getting cycles or pedals into the care homes. One system was a motor tech system, but to get one of those, they're thousands and thousands of pounds. So unfortunately, that wasn't something that we could expand to all the care homes, because the license was geographic. So it wasn't just you paid the license for one bike. Every centre or every home that wanted to use a bike would have to pay for a license as well. So we were looking at different ways to do that. So then we found the portable pedals. You've probably seen them. They come from they're very kind of just very simple setup. It's just a triangle pedal that's got a display on the front of the pedal, so people can log how long they've been cycling, how far they've gone and things like that. So that kind of worked pretty well, but we wanted to kind of get another way to get people to kind of engage with us a little bit more. So what we got the idea then was to go and film some local rides in and around the Wigan area. So we filmed rides in local beauty spots like Amberswood and different places where people may have been a long time ago and might have been, a few weeks ago, and also places like Southport where they may have been on holiday. Obviously when they were younger. That's kind of helped with a lot of reminiscence. So people were starting to take up the activity a lot more, just because they were seeing places that they recognised. It might have been that they've not been for a week, 2 weeks, 20 years, 30 years, whatever, but that really did help the programme. We started this, it was a couple of Decembers ago, and then obviously after about 2 or 3 months, we had lockdown. There's a global pandemic. For pretty much everybody, I know it's been horrific, but for our program, it really accelerated the need for these pedals. And what we saw was a huge increase in demand for the pedals from the care homes, as well as this. A lot of our participants used to come to our active later live sessions. So, the older generations coming to strength and balance classes really started to pay an interest in asking if they could use some of these pedals as well. Because obviously there's a huge deconditioning of the population, we were as willing as we could to get as many of these pedals out. So we've got them out into the community for the people who are taking part in our sessions. They can use the pedals as much or as little as they want to. We don't necessarily set challenges for anybody. We asked at the start if people would like challenges. The resounding thing that we've learned from that is people weren't really that bothered about the competition element or kind of like competitive element in it. All they were looking to do was use these pedals as and when they can, watching the rides on the YouTube channel that we've put them on. And kind of the main thing as well was they just wanted some kind of contact, even if it was just contact just from the start, just to say hello, welcome people to the program, contact when we drop the pedals off, and then those calls at like 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, where we could be the only people that they're speaking to in that day. So the huge thing that we learned was it wasn't as much as it was about activity. Sorry, it was just as much as about the social side, as well as having a contact with somebody. We were successful in a bid as well from Sport England, from the Innovation Fund, and we got over £50,000 from that. I think Chris knows probably a few more details than I do on that part of it, but that was around the figure. From that, we've looked to buy tablets as well. So anybody who's not got access to the internet would be able to use our tablets, which we'd put some data on there so they can access it as well. So it wouldn't be an exclusion criteria that people wouldn't be able to access them through their own Wi-Fi. They could use that off us as well. And we're now just at the evaluation phase of the first block of, like, say, 12, 14 weeks. Everything we've had back has been really, really positive from it. From people seeing the rides, from people using the pedals to be able to keep active. But yeah, I think kind of the main thing for us was the pandemic really boosted the need for these pedals. And it was a case of people could only get out for maybe half an hour for a walk. It might be that people couldn't do that. They can only do a few minutes on the pedals that we've lent to them. So it's kind of come at the right time, to be honest. And I think we are looking to kind of promote this and trying to keep this going for as long as we can, and try and embed it into the wider offer that we've got in Inspiring Healthy Lifestyles, to try and keep people as active as possible. But yeah, what we've also done, we've let people take ownership of the rides as well. So if people wanted access to the rides, they can then, if they want to, film a ride for us, and then we can put that on our YouTube channel as well. So we're giving people ownership of places where they'd want to see. It's not just where we think they should want to, or they wanted to go for a ride. So, I mean, if somebody wanted to say Mexico, then if we wanted to pay, then yeah, I'm more than happy to go out there and maybe film a ride out there, but we'll just wait and see. At the minute, it is kind of confined to the Northwest. But we've had quite a lot of interest. We've had Age UK in Bristol, who've copied our model to try and get this program started down there. And it was the Somerset Activity and Sports Partnership as well. They've also copied our model, and they're kind of using the same base as what we've done to try and keep people active down there. And if this is something that you think might benefit your area, we're more than happy to give out all the information that we've got and what we've learned to try and help as many people get active as possible in and out, you know, Greater Manchester, if that's what needs to happen.
That's great, thanks Rob. You've answered most of my questions there, which is useful. But I guess just for us, it's probably great to reflect on bringing the different sectors together. So obviously working with care homes, working with public health, leisure trusts, then working with communities and, you know, the public that contributed to the rides, and also the cycling group. So bringing all these people together, then, you know, how has that cross-sector working enabled this to grow and then sort of lever more funding?
Yeah, to be honest, Inspiring Healthy Lifestyles, we do have quite a lot of links in the community anyway. You know, it's something that we pride ourselves on. We do work as quite a wide team, not just as in like from our departments, but we do work through with the, like, we've got strong links with the council, with public health. Obviously, we've funded our roles anyway. One thing that we did have a little bit of a struggle with, because as soon as the pandemic hit, a lot of our staff were furloughed. A lot of our staff got redeployed, which kind of created a barrier, obviously, with staff not being at work, you know, for one point, or being part furlough, so only doing 1 or 2 days, which we are still trying to get over those barriers. But it also created an opportunity where a lot of our staff were going into different areas in adult social care, going into supported living, going into reablement, helping people come out of hospitals. So it enabled us to kind of reach people that we wouldn't have seen before, that people that maybe have never accessed our sessions at Inspiring Healthy Lifestyles, hadn't really thought of accessing it. But all of a sudden, there's a need, they've got a need for some kind of activity, and we've kind of got this solution for them. And to be honest, we've since we've released our social media post, we've got up to, I think we're 150 pedals we've donated out in the community since like pretty much the end of November. So kind of working across partnerships is really kind of, it's something we've always done as Inspiring Healthy Lifestyles, but it's absolutely, it's widened, you know, the pathways that we've got to try and get these pedals out to people.
Right, thanks Rob. Chris, just from an LP perspective, has there been any sort of additional benefits or knock-on effects from this piece of work in terms of relationships being built, or new ways of working, or indeed the additional resources, and how that links into the SIF piece?
I think from a local pilot point of view, it was just, like I say, most of the partners were there, they were in place, and you know, a couple of new ones just coming to the table just to get that innovation fund over the line, really, from a Sport England point of view. Yeah, I mean, the model was there, the idea was there. It just needed the pieces bringing together, I suppose, and the right people to put the quotes to it to do that. So I've got to say it was a fairly simple piece of work from a pilot point of view, and we were going to back it if we didn't find the other funding. I think that was the main thing. That the backup plan was there when we were writing the bid. We always knew we had a fallback, whatever the outcome of the other bid was. So we went and sought additional funding. We were lucky enough to get it, but I think we would have funded it ourselves anyway because we recognised its success.
Great. And is there any final sort of takeaway piece of learning from this in terms of ways of working and cross-sector working?
I just think that Rob highlighted obviously a number of barriers, and it doesn't really matter what gets thrown at you in terms of you know, COVID, for example, or whatever. There's always opportunities that can come out of this stuff, and in this example, it probably accelerated the programme. Obviously, you know, as much as we'd rather not have had COVID at all, in this instance, it's worked perfectly for us.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Rob.
Okay, thank you, Kath. Thanks, guys. It's really nice to hear of your example there. And I just, that sort of might have been a sort of small part of it, but that link in with getting people to do the rides and to post them on YouTube, and the kind of connectivity of bringing the sort of social care and the public together in a really tangible way. Because sometimes you do sort of need a tangible solutions that people can work around. So what I wanted to do was hand back to the breakout groups now and really try and spend a bit of time thinking about this area of how to involve local people in the work. You know, just thinking about, again, why is it important, and how can we go about doing that, and what's worked in your areas, and what have we learned from in those areas as well.